Good afternoon, everyone. As most of you, I imagine, would know, my name is Joseph Kearney, and it is my privilege as Dean of Marquette University Law School to welcome you to this event. We will, this afternoon, welcome into our Pro Bono Society more than 100 individuals, Marquette law students, or, if you prefer, future Marquette lawyers. We have done such an admission or induction ceremony for the past several years, and the Pro Bono Society itself was established during the tenure of my predecessor as Dean, the late Howard Eisenberg. The numbers have increased over the years, and you, the students who have made these contributions, really inspire us. Of more recent creation than the induction part of this ceremony, but also inspiring to us, is the first part, the Posner Pro Bono Exchange. Through this, we honor the memory of the late Gene Posner, a member of our class of 1936, who was a lawyer, entrepreneur, and philanthropist here in Milwaukee. It is right that we should honor his memory today because much of our pro bono work has been supported by a generous multi-year gift of the Gene and Ruth Posner Foundation, which is led by Gene's grandson, Josh Gimbel, a lawyer with Gimbel, Riley, Guerin, and Brown in Milwaukee. In particular, the foundation has supported our creation of the position of pro bono coordinator, so ably filled by Angela Schultz, who has led us not only in preparing for this particular event, but far more broadly in working with our students on so many of their pro bono placements over the past several years. I had the privilege to meet Gene Posner several times after becoming dean before his death in 2005. I was able to get a sense of the man, his commitment to Milwaukee, and his belief in the role of lawyers, perhaps Marquette lawyers in particular, in helping individuals solve those problems, whether those individuals were replete with resources or were instead in need of legal services. At the same time, my knowledge of the man is paltry truly relative to that of his grandson, Josh Gimbel, and so we have asked Josh to say a few words in remembrance of his grandfather and by way of introduction of today's event. Josh?
Thank you, Dean, and special thanks to Angela for all your hard work. My grandfather would be proud of how hard you've worked to do what you've done, so thank you very much. I'm thrilled to be here again to represent the Posner Foundation and my grandfather. As the Dean pointed out, he was a 1936 graduate of this fine law school. My father was a 59 graduate of Marquette Law School. My brother was a 1984 graduate, and I went to some other law school in the state of Wisconsin that I won't mention today, but I feel like I have become an honorary member. As a matter of fact, if you ever read the Marquette, what's the name of your publication? The Marquette Lawyer, which is a great publication. One time they did recognize me and put me parenthetically in there, so I appreciate that. That was a nice touch. But I would just first want to say congratulations to all the honorees here today. That's a great accomplishment to not only take the classwork that you have to take, but also to dedicate your time to pro bono service. It is unbelievably important and rewarding. I think I've seen a few of you around because I've donated my time and done some pro bono work at the Milwaukee Justice Center. I probably worked with a couple of you over the years. And just a shout out to Dawn. I don't know if Dawn Calder is here today, but yes, last night she was honored with the Howard Eisenberg Award at the alumni event, and that was a great honor and well-deserved. But I must say that my grandfather, who practiced law for well over 60 years, would be very impressed to see all of you assembled here today. He would be encouraged by Marquette's continued commitment to instill in its law students the importance of providing pro bono legal services. We lawyers hold a monopoly on providing legal services, and it's imperative that as you become practicing lawyers, you continue to meet this obligation. This is so much more likely to occur in cases of individuals such as yourself, as the Dean mentioned last night, who had the ethic and habit of such work while law students. So in short, to the students here, you have the Posner family admiration. So thank you so much for achieving what you did. I would also like to welcome our honored guest today, Ms. Romero. I look forward to your comments. And, of course, to Mike Goucher for all the great things you do and for really having a civil discourse in sometimes a uncivil world when we talk about current events. So thank you, too. And, again, congratulations to all of you.
Thank you, Josh. As Josh has mentioned, Mike Goucher, who is our distinguished fellow in law and public policy, will once again lead the Posner Pro Bono Exchange. The exchange will be with the Honorable Ramona Romero. Ms. Romero today is the General Counsel of the United States Department of Agriculture, meaning, of course, that she is the principal legal advisor to Secretary Tom Vilsack and other department officials. Previously, Ms. Romero was a corporate counsel at E.I. DuPont de Nemours and Company with wide-ranging responsibilities. During the first 10 years of her legal career, she was a litigator at Kroll and Mooring in Washington, D.C. Ms. Romero's reach goes well beyond these demanding jobs. She is a past president of the Hispanic National Bar Association and has been recognized widely for her professional achievements and her leadership in the Latino community and more broadly. The Pro Bono Award that she received from the International Human Rights Law Group is just one example. I could adduce other examples. They are numerous, but the idea is to hear from Ms. Romero in exchange with our colleague Mike Goucher. So let me hand it over to Mike, and as I do, please join me in welcoming the Honorable Ramona Romero.
Dean Kearney, thank you very much, and congratulations in advance to all of the students who are here today on their fine work in our community. It's a pleasure to have you here. Welcome to Milwaukee.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
We're going to begin this discussion by talking about your childhood. This should be, I think, fun and instructional, I think, for the students in this room. You came to this country when you were 10 years old,
right,
from the Dominican Republic. Tell us about your initial days in America and how it shaped you in terms of the person you are today.
Absolutely. I'm very fond of saying that I am a Dominican by birth, a Latina by ethnicity, and an American by choice, right? Because as Mike said, I came here early on in my life. It's a very formative experience to come to an entirely new place where you don't speak any English, with an entirely different culture and an entirely different weather, for example. I mean, think about this. I came Milwaukee. I came to New York City over 40 years ago, and I still remember when I was only 10, and I still remember when I got off the plane, sort of the blast of cold air, the lights of the city, and all of those issues. And the memories go even beyond that, because my mother came here 4 years before I did. So I was in the Dominican Republic with members of my family while she worked and sort of got us a green card. And, I remember standing online at the American consulate in the Dominican Republic waiting for a visa. And there's a Dominican song that talks about buscando visa para un sueño, getting a visa for a dream. So, I'm here because my mother chose for me to be here, and I stayed because I chose to be here because of all the opportunities. That said, growing up, there were a great many challenges, probably challenges similar to the challenges that are faced by a lot of the people you help through your pro bono activities. Single mom, factory worker, did not speak English, grew up in New York City. Sometime probably about between a year and 2 years after I got here, our apartment burnt down. So we really had nothing but the clothes on our back as we came down the fire escape. I'm not homeless, but for the grace of God and the Red Cross. So all of those things shape your philosophy and the approach that you bring to life. And what it has done for me in particular is something that you have and that we share, that is the desire to give back. A very strong interest in service that has been evident throughout the course of my career, although I have always worked in the private sector.
When did you discover that the law was calling you, that the legal profession was the route you wanted to go. How old were you when that thought struck you?
Well, you know, it was a competing interest. I always wanted to be an astronaut for a long time. For a long time. And then I discovered that I was, back then, there were high requirements. I was a little too short, I discovered in high school. So, high challenge. So, you know, I decided to go to law school. Throughout my childhood, though, even though there were no lawyers in my family in the United States, they were all working class people. And even though I really was not in that environment, people always said, oh, you argue so much, you should be a lawyer. You argue so much, you should be a lawyer. And by the time I went to college, it was very clear to me from day one. I told my classmates, I'm going to be a lawyer. That's what I'm going to do. So that was sort of why. I mean, I think although that I wasn't necessarily conscious of this at the time, when I think of lawyers now and when I think about why I love our profession, and I really do love our profession, is because lawyers are the architects of justice, right? Lawyers make the laws, lawyers enforce the law, lawyers represent people in order to ensure that that the promise of America, that is equal justice under law for everybody, regardless of race, color, ethnicity, gender, that is a reality. It is within our power as professionals to make that happen.
So you went to Barnard as an undergrad and then to Harvard Law School. Mm-hmm. So tell us, as you're nearing the end of your time at Harvard Law School, did you know what was next for you? How clear was that path for you then?
It was pretty clear because I had a lot of debt. I had a lot of debt that I had to repay. So the choices were somewhat guided by that fact. And I interviewed at a law firm. This is also a story about opportunity and about not getting discouraged, because I had set up a bunch of on-campus interviews at school, and the law firm that I ended up going to was not a law firm that was on my interview schedule, right? But a woman from the firm reached out to me and said, hey, look, we've heard about you. It would be great if you would interview with us at a law firm in Washington, D.C., and I agreed to do that. I was interviewing in D.C. and in New York. And I did a ton of on-campus interviews, and I got a ton of callbacks, including a ton of callbacks, most of which were in New York City during my second year summer, and very few offers, maybe even only one. So from my perspective, the concept, that taught me to believe that you only really need one job, and you have to make sure that it is the right job, that there's a fit and there's something that you care about, but it's only one. So as you think about those issues and what comes next, you ought to keep that in mind.
So describe that first job for us. What was it like? What did you learn from it?
I was an associate at a firm. I went there as a summer associate during my second year and returned and stayed for about 10. It was like landing in a foreign country again.
How so? How so?
I had no concept, right, other than the summer that I had spent at that firm, what it was like to practice law at a law firm. I was the first Latina there, at least, and I was the only one for probably the first 5 years that I was at the firm. And I had really no sense. I knew how to be a lawyer, and I knew how to train to become a lawyer, how to grow into a real lawyer. And I had been educated for that, right? But I didn't necessarily understand the culture or the environment and the interactions with clients and all of that. I didn't understand the unwritten rules, in other words. And, it took a little bit of time, but I was very fortunate in the sense that I had folks who really worked with me and who liked my talent and who gave me very straightforward and very clear guidance. I remember this was the 80s, right? Mm-hmm. Time of big hair and leather skirts, right? This is a white shoe, big firm in D.C. And I remember when I was a pretty young associate showing up at one point, probably during the course of my first year. I was I've always been pretty stylish, but I didn't quite understand the cultural norms. So I remember showing up in a leather skirt at one point. And a partner, may he rest in peace, who had become a good mentor of mine over the course of the summer that I had been at the firm, and afterwards pulled me aside and said, you know what? That's not appropriate attire. And some people may have taken that the wrong way. I welcome the constructive feedback. I welcome the fact that he was willing to take the risk to tell me that, right? So.
Did you identify him as a mentor early on in the process? Because I think that's something that the students would want to hear about. That's such an important part of really any career.
I've had he was a mentor, but that grew organically, right? Mm-hmm. I found I've had a number of mentors in different sorts of periods of time in my career, and those mentors have always been people who have looked very different than I look, right? And who basically my mentors have been middle class white males, because those were the folks that were in my environment. I was usually the only young woman, and I was usually the only person of color, given what I did. I did white collar and antitrust defense work. And, that was I was not abundant. And at the law firm in particular, there were only two African-American partners, both of whom were women. They were terrific to me, but, the people who practice in my area were of a different culture and gender. And a lot of different people served that role over time. But the relationships grew organically. It was as we worked together, as we got to know each other, as I did good work, people were very supportive.
You've been talking about the legal world that you entered, and it was a very white legal world.
It was.
You have done an awful lot of work to promote diversity in the legal profession, to try and make it a more inclusive profession. Give the students and the folks in this room an idea of some of the things that you've been involved with in order to try and make a difference.
I think about it in three different ways, right? Things that I've done through bar associations. So I've been involved part out of the need for support and the ability to build a network with other lawyers. I've been involved with the bars of color throughout the course of my career, and I've been very involved with the Hispanic bar. I was the president of the Hispanic bar in D.C., and then I was the president of the National Hispanic Bar, the national president. I've worked with the ABA on the Commission on Diversity and on a number of other projects. So that sort of advocacy and working in the bar context has been a part of it. The second part of it has been through my professional work. When I was at DuPont, one of the jobs that I had there was during part of my career was that I was the manager of outside counsel relationships and the legal department's operations. And let me tell you, nothing makes you more popular and more sought after than having influence of our $125 million a year worth of legal business. So, so that was always that was something that really opened a lot of doors for me. And DuPont had a very strong program about encouraging its primary law firms and service providers to be diverse, and I strengthened that program. So I worked a lot on that and did a lot of advocacy and a lot of public speaking with other companies about that issue during that course of time. And then the other part of diversity that I've been involved in, the advocacy work, has been in efforts to build a diverse bench. I have worked a lot on judicial selection issues, both at the state level and at the federal level. I've been involved in the O'Connor Judicial Selection Project based out of Colorado, and as well as Justice at Stake. And this is only my personal opinion, but I think that if there is a very singular threat to our democracy and to the promise of equal justice, is the influence that money is playing in the selection of state judges in states where judges are elected. So I have worked a lot on that, and also on ensuring that there's a diverse pathway to the bench.
How do you think we're doing as a profession in terms of diversity, in terms of being inclusive, in terms of having the legal profession look a lot more like America?
I think the statistics, I think we're doing better, but the statistics suggest that we still have a lot of work to do. Women, for example, in law firms, women have been at around 15 and 20% of the partnership ranks for the last 15, 20 years. The number of minority partners at firms has grown, but has grown very slowly. It's been between 4 and 7% since I've been practicing law, which is 25 years. So there's still quite a bit of work to be done. That said, there's progress. You know, we have 3 women in the Supreme Court today, that is 2 more than we had when I started practicing. So,
let's talk about your transition from the corporate world. DuPont is a big, big company, and now here you are in the public sector. And I want to get your take on the very different worlds that you've experienced. Has it been an easy transition? Have you enjoyed it? Was it your decision, or did other people say, you need to do this?
I've actually wanted for a very long time to do something in government. It took a while for me to do that. You know, there are other things. I'm the mother of 2 children, and I've had a career and all of those issues, and the time wasn't right before for me to be in government. So, but actually, it's kind of interesting because I was not actively looking for a government position. This is what happened. When I was president of the Hispanic National Bar, my presidency ran between September of 2008 and September of 2009. So one of the things that I decided that I wanted to do, because I've been advocating for judicial appointments for Latinos and other people of color for so long, was that I wanted to have a Hispanic appointments project as one of my legacy projects for my year as bar president. And before the election, I started gathering resumes of Hispanic lawyers who wanted to be on the bench or in executive appointments. And during that transition, after the election, there's a transition period, and during that transition, I went into the transition offices with my, database of resumes and on a disk and an Excel spreadsheet saying these are candidates that the Hispanic bar supports for the bench and that the Hispanic bar supports for executive appointments. This is talent. As you look to staff the government. And I started working on that. I tell you, it's pretty extraordinary what an individual and a group of people who are really dedicated can do if they really want to, and the access that they can get. Because I started meeting with the people at presidential personnel. I remember that the president gets inaugurated on January 20th, and shortly thereafter, within the next month, I was visiting with the White House counsel, who was then a guy named Greg Craig, about judges and about the Supreme Court, and with the people in presidential personnel. Through that work, that resulted in quite a few judicial appointments as well as executive branch appointments, I got to know a lot of people in the White House. And then the people in PPL kept saying, wouldn't you be interested in coming into government? I'm like, no, I have a constituency. So I waited. In September 2009, when my term was over, they called me again, and I said, I have to give DuPont back because they had been very supportive of my bar year. And, finally, I think it was in January of 2010 when I agreed to send the White House a resume, and about 2 weeks later, they called me and said, hey, there's a job at the Department of Agriculture as general counsel. Would you be interested? To which I prompted, guys, my team from Milwaukee is back there. So to which I started really laughing and said, guys, I'm from the middle of New York City. What are you guys talking about? I don't know anything about agriculture. But they kept insisting and asked me if I would take a look at the website of the department, because it was a lot more, right, than just agriculture. And I did, and I'm so glad. It's been such a terrific job for me and for any lawyer, really.
Well, I'd like you to explain some of the responsibilities that go with this department. I was talking with one of your aides the other day, and it was pretty stunning just how much you oversee in this department. Give us an idea of the work that you're doing.
I actually, sort of so that I wouldn't forget, I put on, I thought you might ask me that, so that I wouldn't forget, I wrote down some things, right? Because there are a lot of things. The department is probably, in terms of budget, one of the largest departments in government. It's probably the fourth or so in terms of staff. It has about 100,000 people. And we work on everything, right? Food security. It's about food on the table. And it's about food on the table in a lot of different ways. We support farmers, but we also administer the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, which is food stamps, and the school lunch program. We do international food aid, so there's the food part. You cannot eat meat or chicken that has not been inspected by a USDA inspector for safety reasons. So we ensure food safety. We protect animals and plants, right? We regulate biotechnology, for example. We engage in some of the members of my team who are here work on natural resources issues because the Forest Service Region 6 is based here in Milwaukee. So we oversee the National Forest System. We manage about 195 million acres of land around the country. We work with farmers on conservation measures. We do rural economic development. So we fund electric utilities, water utilities, rural libraries. We give loans to people or give direct and guaranteed loans to people who want to start businesses in rural areas. We promote agricultural trade. We do enormous scientific and economic research about agriculture and other issues. Last year alone, the department applied for about 150 patents and got about over 50 of them, including, apparently I was reading in some blurb the other day, that one of the patents was for flour that helps you lose weight. So it's coming.
So that's an amazing, number of responsibilities. Do you derive the same sort of personal satisfaction in practicing this kind of law as opposed to being in a corporate environment?
It's absolutely amazing. I cannot think of a better job for a lawyer like me. I always say that I have a 2-minute attention span. And generally, given the diversity of my work, right, I only have about 2 minutes to think about any particular problem or issue. Then I have people like John and Ron and Jessica back there who do a lot more thinking and work on day-to-day projects. But it's great. I mean, think about it. I have law enforcement issues, right, because the Forest Service has a law enforcement component. They have to, enforce the laws in the national forest. We have an Air Force because we have planes to fight fires. We have a Navy because we need to get around the waterways in Alaska. So you name it, all of the kinds of issues that you can think about in terms of law, from commercial and financial issues to constitutional issues to sovereignty issues, all of those come to play. So it's just absolutely amazing. One of my concerns is that, this job comes with an expiration date, right? I serve at the pleasure of the president. So when I'm no longer in this role, I keep struggling with the idea, what am I going to do that is going to be as fun?
Wow. Well, that says a lot about how much you enjoy the job right now.
I do.
Before we wrap up this part of the ceremony, I'm wondering if you might share some thoughts with the students in this room about public service, about trying to make a difference in the legal profession, about careers and what they can mean on so many different levels. What would you like to say to the students here as they either complete their degrees or they go on to the next year?
Well, first, you can serve regardless of where you are, right? Because I spent the first 22 years of my career in the private sector, but I always managed to combine my private sector activities with pro bono work, with community activities, with advocacy activities. So you can think and expand. You can serve the public from any setting that you choose to go into. 2, it is really important to be open to opportunities and to be willing to take risk and to go outside your comfort zone. Why do I say that? Think about what I told you about the Department of Agriculture, right? When somebody first said, would you be interested in this job? My reaction, you're nuts. I don't know anything about this stuff. It's also, I gave up a very secure career a job where I had a very clear career trajectory, and I was clearly in a progression because I wanted to serve and because I wanted to do something different. So I was open to that and listened to what I said a couple of minutes ago. Now I worry, what do I do next that's going to be as much fun and as engaging and as challenging? So be open to opportunity and be open to taking risks that are appropriate risks within your comfort zone, right? I have found that there's a great blessing and honor in serving, regardless of how you serve. And you can serve, as I said from the beginning, from a lot of different stages and a lot of different places in life. And last but not least, it is important, and I often tell students and my daughters and anybody who'll hear me, sometimes it's better to say no than to say yes and not do it well. You know, so when you say yes, when you make a commitment, whether it's volunteer or whatever, give it your best. Because if you give it your best, maybe the White House will call you and say, would you like to work for the President of the United States? And, you know, this is Wisconsin, so I will end that with a quote from Vince Lombardi, who said, the only place where success comes before work, it is the dictionary. So in order for you to be successful, is hard work, is sacrifice, is all of that. And
that's great. Great words. We have time for just a handful of questions. If anybody has a question, feel free to raise your hand. And if you don't, we'll continue on. But you have the opportunity here.
Anyone? Come on. There's got to be something. I mean, please go ahead. No, thankfully that's under the Bureau of Land Management of the Department of the Interior. So
just want to make that clear.
I want to make that perfectly clear. And but you know, sovereignty issues are issues that come up quite often out west.
Sure. Question for anyone? Yes.
Yeah, I guess sort of moving forward, you talked about diversifying your profession. I guess, you know, what steps do you really see being taken to sort of change the white male-centric sort of aspect of law as it stands now?
I think, you know, I'm going to talk about from my personal experience as being when I was in the private sector. One of the key things I think that a lot of companies realize and have undertaken to do is to insist that their law firms be diverse. And the insistence is not only about doing the right thing, it's also about doing the expedient and intelligent thing, because it's, you know, I mean, there are a lot of studies that show that when you have diverse teams, different ideas come to the fore and better solutions get driven. I remember Rick Palmore, he used to be the general counsel of Sara Lee, and he's one of the people that I did a lot of work with on diversity issues. He's now the general counsel at General Mills, if I recall correctly. And he always used to talk about, Sara Lee used to own Champion, one of their divisions, and about the invention of the tagless T-shirt. It was because one of the moms one of the women who worked there on the marketing team was a mom, and her kids kept complaining about the discomfort, and you know that personal experience prompted her to sort of contribute a business idea that was enormously successful. He always talks about that, right? It's not just about color or race or gender. It's about, although those are important things, but is also about diversity of experience and what you can contribute. So a lot of companies, Walmart, DuPont, Sara Lee, and a number of others have undertaken initiatives where they are really quite deliberate about encouraging their service providers to be diverse and to provide equal opportunity for folks.
Maybe time for one more question or so. Anybody?
Yes, sir.
Can you expand a little bit more on the detail of mentoring in your first few years, or what were the things that you had to do to become a lawyer that you mentioned?
I had to work really hard, right, in terms of mentoring. I think that there are a couple different paradigms, right, that operate in law firms and in different places. There are people who can serve as teachers for you, who do so periodically and who take an interest in your career, because taking an interest in your career is good for you, but it's also good for them, right? You make them look good. So a lot of folks that I worked with at a firm, I made them look good. There were also people who just took an interest in me because I was a person, right? Our shared humanity. And they gave me guidance and they gave me advice. A lot of those relationships, though, grew over time. I also think and I spend quite a lot of time with folks. There are a few people that I mentor routinely currently, but there are a lot of people that I spend time with on particular issues. Because they call me and they said, hey, would you like to have coffee? There's this issue I want to talk with you about. And I think that those are important interactions. And I do it with some people as well. And then there's the sponsor paradigm, right? Where you have worked with somebody for so long and so closely that you literally become indispensable to their practice. And they support you for that reason. I've had some of both. I think it's a little bit more difficult for people of color to get into the sponsor paradigm category. But, the thing is to keep trying. I find that as busy as I am, perhaps because I've been so blessed with so many people who have spent time on me and given me guidance and given me support, as busy as I am, if a young person, meets me at an event and says, hey, can I spend 15 minutes with you? Can you have coffee? Can you spend some time with me on the phone? And I keep telling them, of course, be persistent. Call my scheduler. Keep at it. It may take me a while, but we'll do it because I think it is so very important. Did that answer your question? All right.
We're going to wrap things up there and continue on with the program, but I'd like to just take a moment and say a special thanks to Ramona for her time and for joining us here again at Marquette Law School. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So thank you both very much. I myself often say as dean that so much of education requires learning from examples. To do that requires that we have examples or exemplars, and Ms. Romero certainly is one, and I'm very grateful for you to come back to Eckstein Hall for the second time in a year and to Milwaukee, and I don't want any of Ms. Romero's colleagues here in Milwaukee to think that it's really to check in on them that she keeps returning. She has entire confidence in you, I'm sure. It is my charm that keeps her coming back. I don't know. There's a reason I usually stick to my prepared remarks. Let's now turn our attention directly to our students. They have not yet quite earned the appellation of Marquette lawyers, but they certainly have distinguished themselves in their commitment to some of the best ideals of the legal profession. In particular, even while students, even while concerning themselves with the press of academic rigor, including 4-credit internships, and with the frequent need to find some remunerative work, given the financial exigencies that law school imposes, even in these circumstances, these individuals have provided pro bono work. The students whom we honor this afternoon have met rigorous criteria in this regard. They have provided at least 50 and in some cases 120 hours of work that has been not for academic credit or compensation, supervised by a licensed attorney, primarily legal in nature, and in service of the indigent, those who otherwise lack access to justice, or a nonprofit whose mission is to do the same. I would like to give everyone here a sense of the specific ways in which our honorees have gone about this, or at least some of the places and projects. Let me go with a top 10 list, as it were. First, and occupying pride of place in our list, the Marquette Volunteer Legal Clinic, which now operates at 5 locations: the House of Peace, the Hillview location with Centro Hispano, the County Veteran Service Office, the Milwaukee Justice Center and the Milwaukee County Courthouse, and now, as of this year, the Mobile Legal Clinic. Second, the Milwaukee Justice Center Family Law Forms Assistance Clinic. Third, the Marquette Legal Initiative for Nonprofit Corporations. Fourth, the Domestic Violence Injunctions Hearings Project. This project, in which we are privileged to collaborate with Quarles and Brady and Sojourner Family Peace Center, is a little more than a year old and has already assisted nearly 300 petitioners seeking domestic violence injunction orders. Fifth, the Bankruptcy Help Desk at the U.S. Courthouse. Sixth, the Know Your Rights trips to the Kenosha Detention Center. Seventh, Wills for Heroes, which is a project of the State Bar of Wisconsin. Eighth, the Refugee Help Desk at the Pan-African Community Association. Ninth, the Guardianship Assistance Project in collaboration with Quarles and Brady and Children's Hospital of Wisconsin. And 10th, the Metro Milwaukee Foreclosure Mediation Project. Our honorees are a lot more in number than 10, 114 to be precise, 77 of whom are with us this afternoon. 50 hours constitute a substantial amount of time to devote to pro bono work. We are so impressed and so grateful. We are even more impressed by the fact that almost one-third of the group achieved the additional distinction of 120 hours. In all events, warm congratulations and thank you to all the new members of the Pro Bono Society. We will proceed with Angela Schultz's reading the names, whereupon we would ask each individual to come forward, and it will be my privilege to give him or her, that is to say, to give one of you, a certificate recognizing your induction into the Pro Bono Society.
Thank you. Let me just take 1 minute to thank Dean Kearney and also to thank Josh Gimbel. It really is for the leadership of Dean Kearney and for Josh Gimbel's vision and generous commitment to Marquette that we're able to have such a robust pro bono program here at Marquette. So thank you for that. And I also just need to take a minute in particular to talk to those of you who are about to graduate and become attorneys. I hope that you will join us at our clinics. The doors are open. We always have a seat for a volunteer attorney. All of the learning that we do there on a daily basis continues as you work there as an attorney, just the way that it did when you were a student. The fun continues. It's just as good of a time, and it's just as challenging. So I hope that you'll, put that in mind and put it in your calendar and join us in your new role, working alongside a student this time. Now, as I read the names, please do come forward and accept your certificate acknowledging your significant accomplishment. Jeremy Abrams. Lindsay Anderson. Lucas Benowitz. Brian Brockman. Michelle Cahoon. Cody Karstens. Sierra Chesser. Jillian Davis. Lindsay Decker. Christian Dem. Andrew Doctor. Adam Droyth. Janine Epstein. Joelle Espinosa. Daniel Fahey. Andrea Fendry. Ellen French. Morgan Galusha. Christopher Hammond. Robert Hampton. Kristen Hardy. Gregory Helding, David Herring, Marcus Hirsch, Corey Jorman, Brittany LaFond, Jill Lake, Bora Lee, Gabriela Leija, Danielle Lemieux, Portia Lawand, Elise Libby, Catherine Lowe, Michaela Logan, Amanda Litke, James McCann, Amy McGinty, Paul Mann, Kyla Motes, Samir Nakle, Natalie Niels, Nicole Ostrowski, Vanessa Pastor, Jessica Poole, Carrie Puig, Caitlin Reese, Lauren Rosenbaum, Carl Samus, Christina Sheik, Natalie Schifferl, Megan Schultz, Katie Shaw, Alexandra Shortridge, Kyle Silver, Justin Singleton, Joy Sisler, Amy Smith, Spencer Sotolongo, Renee Spears, Kevin Spexarth, Amanda Tunin, Matthew Topin, Cassandra Van Gompel, Adam Vanderwerf, Gail Voss, Derek Waterstreet, Chelsea Weatherspoon, Bradley Wentz, Julia Wesley, Jared Widseth, Taylor Wilson, Morgan Wills, and David Wolf. Congratulations.
warm congratulations and thank you to all of you. I'm never altogether sure which one of those to say in this context. I suppose that both are appropriate. Congratulations on your induction into the Pro Bono Society. To say that, though, in that way perhaps implies that there is some element of luck to it, or that it is something that has simply come your way without terribly much work of yours. And so that's why I also say thank you. The work that you have done, even as law students, in service of others with your developing legal training, really does reflect the best, at least aspirations, maybe traditions as well, but we're trying to change some of the traditions in the legal profession, so we'll go with aspirations. And you really are building a different legal profession, just as we have tried over the years to build a different Marquette University Law School. We did that literally, of course, in the sense of Eckstein Hall, but we try to do that figuratively as well. The old Marquette Law School was pretty good too, but we are constantly looking to be better, and that was a central message of my predecessor, Howard Eisenberg. He was the dean when I joined the faculty in 1997. I arrived here as someone who was 8 years out of law school and had practiced law in Chicago for 6 of those years, and I thought I was reasonably well formed as a professional. And whether I was or not, both the fact of being back in the Jesuit surroundings, I had been in those in high school, but also under the influence of as inspirational a pro bono lawyer as Howard Eisenberg, meant that at the end of my 5 years with him as dean, I felt myself to be further along in terms of my understanding of what the possibilities and the realities of the legal profession are. And it is one thing to be inspired by a dean or by a colleague. It is another thing, and I think all the more meaningful, to be inspired by one's students. And I speak on behalf of my entire faculty and really all of us who are associated with Marquette University Law School, including the alumni, when I say quite genuinely that you inspire us. So again, thank you. That is pretty well what I want to say. That is to say congratulations and thank you. I do want to say thank you again to Ramona Romero. I also want to say thank you again to Josh Gimbel and the Posner Foundation, and especially to you on behalf of all of us in the Marquette Law School community, whether it is those of us who work at the law school on a daily basis, whether it is the ranks of Marquette lawyers more generally, or really whether it is anyone in the legal community in southeastern Wisconsin and beyond, because we claim it all for Marquette Law School. We really do admire the work that you have done as students. So we look forward to your work, as Angela has said. Another thank you to Angela, as Marquette lawyers, and we hope that everyone will join us right outside of this room in the Zilber Forum for a reception. Thank you.